Last year I released the first 4 parts of my Fallout 4 analysis, which total about 14 hours combined. Now I realize starting into such a series may be a bit daunting, so I decided to clip a few major segments out to be their own standalone videos. Specifically, each section on the 4 factions you can side with for the main story. This video covers the Brotherhood. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and consider checking out the full analysis. Finally, we reached the Brotherhood of Steel, so I can't prolong this anymore. Oh boy, this is gonna be rough. So at this point, the Brotherhood has had a bit of a rough history in terms of consistency, and that's largely Bethesda's fault. In Fallout 1, they were xenophobic technophiles. They hoarded technology because they didn't trust the dirty simpleton outsiders with it, as they believed the stupid and ignorant people in control of highly advanced technology is what led to the nuclear destruction of the world, as well as the horrors of the FEV. By the end of Fallout 1, they moved more to research and development, but this doesn't really seem to last. By Fallout 2, the Brotherhood has essentially fallen. They're still around, however they seem to be on the brink of destruction, facing heavy losses, and again, trying to acquire technology. But by the end, they're still not in a good position. The story of the Brotherhood is essentially that of a group that dies out due to stagnation and refusing to change their ways. By Fallout 3, they're just kind of randomly on the other side of the country. Keep in mind, traveling such a distance in a nuclear apocalypse with unknown dangers, mutations, and radioactive horrors is going to be a very long and dangerous journey. Not to mention, keeping supplied for such a journey would be difficult too. And now, in the capital wasteland, they're just super awesome good guy Power Rangers, going out and trying to help and save people, and dying en masse for no reason. This is a massive departure from what they were, and it was jarring for many fans of the first 2 games. Now in Fallout 4, they've dramatically changed once again to essentially be a diet enclave. They want to purge the mutants and ghouls with no nuance or deeper thought. They just mindlessly want to genocide them, regardless of how they act. Virgil helps you get into the Institute. It would be literally impossible without him, and yet the Brotherhood demands you kill him regardless, because he's a super mutant. Even if you tell them he's been cured, Captain Kells doesn't seem fully convinced, still considering him a threat. He doesn't ask about this cure, nor do they inquire about how more can be made to revert super mutants instead of simply just killing them. Worse yet, the Brotherhood come across as being almost completely uninterested in the acquisition of technology. During the Brotherhood path, you've got a chance to ask one of their head researchers about Institute technology, and he's practically horrified by it and wants it all destroyed.
That's quite the crater you've manifested in the center of Boston. Marvelous work. Simply marvelous.
You aren't disappointed that all the Institute's technical research just went up in smoke?
On the contrary, it's always been my sincerest hope that the Institute's ill-conceived research would never see the light of day. And, thanks to your efforts, it appears that my hopes have become reality.
No nuance, not just synths specifically, but total deletion of everything they've done. As if every single scientific or technological advancement or discovery is, in itself, an abomination, even though they're researching things such as how to grow healthy and edible plants in irradiated soil, as well as new weapons and even cybernetics, something that could be useful for some Brotherhood members. The Brotherhood practically used to worship technology, and now they seem to fear it and go off on crusades to destroy it. The synths are at least partially understandable. They're fake people who could replace normal people and infiltrate groups, though it naturally goes to the extreme, and they want all synths killed regardless of what they're doing. But to mindlessly destroy everything else is just absurdity for what the Brotherhood is. Much like in Fallout 3, it feels as though Bethesda made their own faction, and just applied the Brotherhood name and iconography to it, as if it would just make total sense, because it's been years since the previous game. It very much feels as though Bethesda doesn't know what to do with the Brotherhood, and just includes them in every single game for brand recognition, because it's a popular and well-known faction. But because Bethesda doesn't seem to understand them in the slightest, they just keep doing seemingly random things with them that just don't fit in with what the Brotherhood are. And rather than naturally developing them to that point over time, they just move all the pieces on the board to what is most convenient for Bethesda to make the newest iteration of the Brotherhood and just say, this is the way it is. The Brotherhood are saviors, the Brotherhood are Diet Enclave. The Brotherhood just had a satellite and started a new group of Brotherhood across the entire country, even though the original leaders are still in charge and would never fucking do this. It's totally okay. Our epic OC is over there and is friends with a deep lore character. No development of the faction's ideals, it's just a snap of the fingers and we get an entirely new Brotherhood. It is very irritating and jarring, because they're just being shoved into locations and fucking time periods they should not exist in. And worse yet, they're constantly changing dramatically. So we can never tell what they're going to be doing or how they'll act. Honest to God, how are they going to act in Fallout 5? Will they be a full-on military conquering territory? Will they be pure research and development? Will they be Power Rangers again? Will they be so evil that the Enclave blushes at their deeds? Will they be full-on technophobes, hell-bent on destroying all technology to revert humanity back to the Stone Age? We just don't know, because Bethesda does whatever the fuck they want, to hell with consistency. This raises a similar problem as the Bethesda Fallout games themselves do. Because we have all these different iterations of both Fallout and the Brotherhood, we also have different perspectives on what the true Fallout and Brotherhood are. Some people unironically think Fallout 3 is the true Fallout, and how all the games in the series should be, which would be quite the grim future for any franchise, being held to such an insanely low standard. Much of the same seems to be the case for the Brotherhood. We've got the Technophiles, the Power Rangers, and the Diet Enclave. As such, their future appearances will be compared to these iterations, and they won't be faithful to one another. The other issue with the Brotherhood being here is a bit of a fatigue from seeing them constantly. It gets tiring seeing the same few factions over and over and over again, even if they are bastardized each time they show up, instead of anything new, especially when visiting new regions of the country. It makes sense to see the Brotherhood in Fallout 1 and 2, it's the same region of the world. It makes less sense to see them in Washington DC, then in Boston, then in West Virginia. At this point, it feels safe to say we'll see the Brotherhood in all 50 states and Canada and Mexico. You bet your fucking ass the Brotherhood are in Hawaii. Rather than simply using only new factions in a new part of the world, they rely too heavily on established factions. They're constantly reusing the iconography of the original games. For some reason, Bethesda has a lot of trouble with factions in Fallout. In Fallout 3, the only real new factions were the Regulators and the Talon Company, both of which were microscopically thin. Fallout 4 introduces the Minutemen, the Institute, and the Railroad, and we've already been through their issues. It seems when it comes to Fallout, Bethesda can't work with a faction to save their lives, which is a bit dire when you realize that these games largely focused on groups, towns, and factions interacting with one another, especially a game like Fallout 4, which has 4 main factions to choose from. But regardless of any new factions being trash, there is no need to constantly revisit old factions, especially if all you're doing is damaging their lore. Even if new factions are made poorly, at least they're not damaging something that already exists. Bit of a tangent, but I felt it was required. Back to the immediate topic though, the Brotherhood comes to wipe out the Institute because they believe synths are abominations of technology. This starts off as being aware of vaguely described energy readings, but I guess at some point, they just learn that the synths originate from the Commonwealth and show up and forced to deal with it. I say I guess because this happens regardless of how much you interact with them. They just show up after killing Kellogg. Speaking of keeping advanced technology out of hands that will misuse it, the Brotherhood captures entire stockpiles of nukes to use against their enemies. Twice. Granted, one of them is a stockpile of mini-nukes, the point remains. Oh, and let's not forget their Gary Stu of a leader, Elder Maxon, a 20-year-old elder that became elder due to a unanimous vote of West Coast Brotherhood elders, and looks like he's seen 20 years of battle himself. That's right, this kid turned into this in just 10 years. Maybe it's a good thing they relegated him to quest giver, rather than giving him any actual importance in the story and world where he goes out and does things. As for their main quest, we'll start off with Revelli. You get this after killing Kellogg regardless of whether you've met Paladin Dance or done his quest yet or not. This sends you to the airport, where the Brotherhood set up their base of operations. If you've done Dance's quests, you'll be invited aboard. If you haven't, you'll be sent to the police station to meet him.
This area is off limits to civilians. I order you to stand down and tell me what you're doing here immediately.
I was hoping to track down the owners of that huge airship.
Well, you found us. And since this is a military installation, this is the closest you're gonna get to her.
I'm no stranger to these installations. My husband was in the military.
Really? Well then, you might just be in luck. With your experience, you might actually fit in with the Brotherhood. We're always looking to add a few more brothers and sisters to our ranks, if you think you have what it takes.
It is so weird that he just accepts at face value that a Wastelander was married to someone in the military, and that alone is enough for him to just think you might fit in with the Brotherhood, rather than having any military training. Either way, your first encounter with Dance starts with fire support. As you approach the police station, they're under siege by ghouls, and you help Dance kill them. Following that is Call to Arms, where you travel with Dance to a nearby location to retrieve an item, and the setup for this is kind of awful. If the Brotherhood isn't in the region yet, then it makes sense that you might need the deep-range transmitter to contact them all the way in the capital Wasteland. Alright, that's fine, that makes sense. But if the Brotherhood is in the Commonwealth, then you still need the deep-range transmitter to contact them when they're in the same city. This makes much less sense and feels more contrived than anything. They didn't want to change the situation at all to properly account for the Brotherhood being here now, so instead they just have Dance say a different line in which he can't contact the Brotherhood, who are only a few miles away. After that is Semper Invicta, where you do a Radiant quest for each of Dance's buddies. One has you collect a random item from a random location, the other has you kill enemies in a random location. If the Brotherhood haven't arrived in their Zeppelin yet, this is where the questline pauses until they do show up. Or you can do the Radiant quest forever if you please. Next is Shadow of Steel. You go to the Zeppelin, talk to Captain Kells, then listen to Maxon's speech and talk to him. I'm not sure why this and the next quest are considered two different quests, when they amount to talking to NPCs and not much else. Tour of Duty has you introduce yourself to many of the supposedly key NPCs within the Brotherhood, most of which are Radiant quest dispensers, of course. They amount to little more than cardboard cutouts that this game tries to pass off as characters. Just to make it clear too, since I keep complaining about how combat focused this game is, much of the dialogue here has very little value. You're learning about some of these characters and the Brotherhood, but having this information or not doesn't change much of anything either way. The dialogue once again comes across as the bare minimum to make this look like a military-styled faction. The scribe says he's overworked and has Radiant quests for you. The quartermaster says it's his job to be a quartermaster, and that he has Radiant quests for you. The mechanic talks to you about power armor, and alludes to the fact that she has Radiant quests for you. And the doctor asks you some extremely basic questions. Following that is Show No Mercy. Go to a nearby fort to kill all the super mutants there, so the Brotherhood could take the mini-nukes there to use in their war on the Institute. If you haven't made it into the Institute at this point, the Brotherhood will just tell you to do what you can to find a way into the Institute, even though there's no actual reason to not work on the repairs to Liberty Prime in the meantime, besides the fact that you still have the option to join the Institute, and completing their path requires Liberty Prime to not be functional yet. So the Brotherhood very kindly and respectfully just doesn't complete this vital task they have no reason to not do, because otherwise the Institute path can't be completed. Yeah, it's fucking dumb. Additionally, the game simply isn't prepared for what happens if you've built the teleporter with another faction, but do not enter the Institute, then join the Brotherhood and do their missions, leading to this weird exchange.
Now, I'm sure you're aware that Fort Strong was simply the first step towards the liberation of the Commonwealth. An even greater task lies ahead. The Institute and everyone responsible for the creation of the synths must be eliminated. At all costs.
Elder Maxon?
The Institute and everyone responsible for the creation of the synths must be eliminated. At all costs. The Institute and everyone responsible for the creation of the synths must be...
The conversation just ends, and you can't speak with him anymore. This gets worse once you do enter the Institute and return to the Brotherhood only for him to chew you out for it.
Our latest intelligence tells us you've infiltrated the Institute and liberated a valuable holotape from their facility. I'm quite disappointed you chose to build the signal interceptor without the Brotherhood Knight. However, you've secured passage to and from their facility, which was one of our primary goals. So, I'm willing to overlook your lapse in judgment.
Once you do learn of a way in, you get the next quest, From Within. You're set to convince Dr. Lee to return to the Brotherhood. She wants to know what happened to Virgil, so you go to the FEV lab and get a personal log of his to show her, and that convinces her to leave, as she learns the Institute has been lying to her. You can tell her you've met him, but she doesn't believe you. This also kind of raises the question of why she's even here. There doesn't seem to be a good reason for it besides the fact she's a character we recognize from Fallout 3. She also seems to believe the Brotherhood is out to kill her, almost outright stating that she's been paranoid about it for years. Bonk. She claims this is because she worked on sensitive projects for them, but I'm not buying that as a reason. After that is Outside the Wire. This is a parallel to the Minutemen's Inside Job quest, where you just download shit from an Institute computer and return the info to the Brotherhood, and considering it's just a reskin of that other quest, it contains all the same issues. Next is Liberty Reprimed. You're sent to retrieve an item and build 4 items in the settlement workshop for Liberty Prime. Then you're sent to locate bombs for Liberty Prime to use in battle. This sends you to a military base in the Glowing Sea. It's been infested with the children of Adam, who were in turn killed by feral ghouls. Apparently they tried to launch a nuke, which just goes to show how fucking insane these obnoxious cunts are. One of them is still alive and tries to talk to you, but you're better off just blowing him away immediately. You know, I wrote that line several years ago, and I got to thinking, maybe I didn't give the game a proper chance here. Maybe this could be an interesting interaction. One could almost say that by writing this character off purely because he's a Cult of Adam follower, that I wasn't doing my job properly. So this time around, I talked to him.
State your purpose, stranger. You walk on Atom's hallowed ground.
Who's Adam?
Atom is all. He is the bringer of light, the great divider. He is the infinite worlds within all of us.
Oh, right. Hallowed ground. Obviously. Just look how wonderful this place is.
Your mockery is wasted. The children of Atom have sworn to guard this place until the time of the Great Divide. None shall enter.
Trust me, I'm on your side here. I want to help you out.
Atom has no need of help from non-believers. When he returns to us, these relics will carry his word and his glory to all corners of the earth. That is why they must be safeguarded.
This man is obviously delusional. I recommend we switch tactics.
I want to spread his glory. Look, the bombs will get used, okay? Isn't that what you want?
Your words ring hollow. I do not hear Atom's voice in yours. You seek to further your own ends, not his.
Yeah, I was completely right. You're better off just blowing him away immediately. There's also a holotape from the single most bored-sounding character in the entire game. Some pre-war worker in the facility, realizing the bombs dropping was real.
This is Captain Mitch Dunleavy, 132nd Engineering Corps at Sentinel Site Prescott. All lines of communication are down, and we're tracking multiple inbounds on radar. If this is a drill, we need confirmation immediately. We've got a lot of nervous soldiers over here, Command. If this is the big one, they want to head home to their families before it's too late. Some of the inbounds are getting awfully close. Wait a minute. The inbounds are splitting into multiple targets? Oh, hell. This is it, isn't it? May God have mercy on our souls.
Paladin Dance says he'll stay behind with the bombs, likely because he read the script and knew he has to hide in a dungeon for the next quest, and for that to happen, he can't be with you. It's also worth noting that these nukes are said to be the same class of nuke that was dropped from planes in the war. This isn't some kind of lesser nuke, this is the real deal. It's bizarre how casually used and weak they appear to be later, when these are the bombs that are being dropped during the war. Now obviously, these kinds of bombs can be built to different specs, but when you've got bombs like this, or like this, it raises the question of why you'd bother dropping these bombs from a plane when there's something that would be classified as a mini-nuke if the mini-nukes didn't already exist. A lot of their problem is in their portrayal when they're used because they do appear to be very weak. Why would you drop a nuke this weak from a plane when a conventional bomb will do? Additionally, another point I want to bring up is the fact that Dr. Lee is referred to several times as being one of the original designers of Liberty Prime.
Luckily, you were able to convince Dr. Madison Lee to return to the Brotherhood. She was on the original build team for Liberty Prime a little over a decade ago.
Why won't you help us with Liberty Prime?
I originally left the Brotherhood because I was tired of being stepped on and used. First, there was the Water Purification Project, designed to freely benefit the entire Capital Wasteland. Even though the Brotherhood allowed it to be activated, they wanted to control it. But that wasn't enough. They forced me to help design Liberty Prime. Turned my work into a weapon of war.
We're working with one of Prime's original designers. I don't see it getting any better than that.
Will she be harmed if she doesn't cooperate?
Absolutely not. We have big plans for Dr. Lee, including the resurrection of one of her greatest creations. The last thing we'd want to do is kill the Golden Goose.
I'm not sure why the writers decided to do this, because it just doesn't make any sense. Liberty Prime was almost complete before the war. Sure, she apparently helped solve the power issue off-screen in Fallout 3, but that does not constitute being an original designer, as it was designed over 200 years before Fallout 3. She just came along and solved a problem that hadn't been solved yet. Not to downplay the achievement of that either, because that is a big deal, but that still wouldn't make her an original designer. Further, she's characterizing it as them forcing her to turn her work into a weapon of war. But she knew this going into it in Fallout 3. She helped fix the power issue for Liberty Prime, so they could defeat the Enclave who were holding the water purifier. After that is Blind Betrayal. You're accused of knowing Paladin Dance is a synth and not reporting it. There's several issues with this quest from the start. First of all, after securing the nukes, you go back and test Liberty Prime with the mechanic and Dr. Lee. Then you have to go up to face Maxson. He believes you've been lying to him and hiding the truth about Dance from him for some reason. And yet his priority isn't to sort this out with him immediately, it's to allow you to watch these two turn Liberty Prime on for the first time. He's also coming at you as if you should have known that Dance is a synth, that he would have confided in you, or something? Even though you might only know him for a few days, or even hours at this point. If he did know he was a synth, why in the world would he trust you with this information after barely knowing him? So because he's a synth, you're sent to kill him.
Oh, Knight. I was told you were coming. Sorry about this business with Dance.
He'll be missed.
Doubtful. I wouldn't miss a synth any sooner than I'd miss a transistor radio. I was merely sorry that you'd been duped.
Jesus Christ, why so bloodthirsty and heartless? I genuinely find it hard to believe that people that have worked with Dance, trusted him for years, their brother-in-arms in many battles, are all suddenly just okay with the idea that all those experiences meant nothing and he's just a machine that needs to be put down. Now I understand that in cult-like situations, that when someone from the in-group changes in some way, or goes against the group, that the cult will turn on that person as if that person has betrayed them, And I could imagine this being the case for many members in the Brotherhood, but not all of them. I could understand the rabid devotion of the Brotherhood to eliminate synths prior to this, but this is the kind of thing that should make at least a few people stop and question their beliefs. Maybe even causing a bit of a divide within the Brotherhood for those who stick to the idea that synths are abominations, and those who genuinely rethink their position on the synths. The best we get is Dance's scribe buddy being against killing him. One single person.
Do you actually plan on killing Paladin Dance?
That's a risky question, Halen.
I know it is, but I need you to listen to me for a minute. I've known Paladin Dance ever since I was an initiate. He trained me, showed me the ropes, and when I screwed up, he taught me to dust myself off and move on. He's earned my admiration, my respect, and my friendship. I don't care what Quinlan's report says. I don't care if he's a machine or not. He's still Dance.
Why are you telling me all of this?
Because someone has to before you rush off and carry out Maxon's orders without thinking about what you're doing. Dance is the most selfless person I've ever met. I've watched him risk his own life based on nothing more than principle alone. That's why I'm asking you, not just as a member of the Brotherhood, but as a human being. Give him a chance. Let him tell his side of the story. If you're not convinced by what he says, or somehow he's become truly lost to us, then you do what you have to do.
Alright, I'll hear him out.
That's all that I ask. I'll just have to trust that when the time comes, you'll do the right thing.
This is genuinely a really good character moment and conversation where someone who knows Dance is begging you to spare him. But why is she the only one to feel this way? Dance has never saved anyone in the field? He never risked his life for one of his brothers? He's never been a good soldier to fight side by side against a relentless enemy. Bullshit. And don't give me any shit about random nameless Brotherhood NPCs possibly showing sympathy in their random lines of dialogue, if such lines even exist. That shit is shallow and meaningless. You can either kill him, or spare him. This will be a slight tangent, but when I was getting footage, I was testing to see what all the dialogue options were, to convince him to not die, and this was one of the options.
You're the proof that Maxon's wrong. You're a synth, but everything you've done has been for the good of mankind.
You're right. How could I have been so blind? I'm not technology that's gone out of control. I've been a benefit to mankind, not its downfall. Perhaps now that you've opened my eyes, I can consider my next move.
I genuinely really liked this response over the other two, which were either calling him a coward or appealing that you're his friend and you'd miss him if he were gone. I felt this response was the best one, and even after checking the other two, I went back to the one I liked more, only to remember that it didn't matter. See, each of these three options are drastically different, and realistically, should have a different impact on the character, with the one I'm highlighting here obviously being the best, because this genuinely feels like a moment for character growth. But because this is a cheap, shallow, lazy Bethesda game, we don't get that. Dance would stand as proof that synths are more than just machines, but he never goes on to fulfill that purpose in any major way. While I was loading the save to get this answer again, I realized how pointless it was, because the game was never going to reflect my choice of telling him that he's proof that Maxon is wrong about the synths over the other dialogue options, as all the dialogue responses here and in the next encounter will always be the same regardless of what you say, and all Dance does after this is be your companion. If you spare him, when you leave you'll find Maxon outside waiting for you, and he again demands you kill Dance. You can kill him, let Maxon kill him, or convince Maxon to let him live. The game almost has a good moment here, but it doesn't truly achieve it. There's a lot that could be said for Maxon deciding to spare Dance in this instance, but it ultimately rings hollow when the rest of the writing for this game is shallow and pointless. This doesn't lead to any character development for Maxon, it's just one synth he spares, and he's back to normal, wanting to destroy everything he considers to be an abomination. There's no introspection for the character, considering his ideals, nor is there any character growth. Keep in mind, he's known Dance for years, and Dance isn't a replacement of someone who's been taken. He's just a random synth that was freed, made it to the capital wasteland, and ended up joining the Brotherhood. Maxon even speaks very well of Dance prior to this discovery, saying he's one of Maxon's most trusted men.
Seeing as he's one of my most respected field officers, you couldn't get a better recommendation.
Dance has fought all his life for mankind. Him being a synth didn't change anything. He's as human as much as anyone else is, and this should be something people recognize. This should give Maxon some pause for thought, and consider things more deeply than acting rashly, but it might as well be nothing with how the game handles it.
Dance shares the same beliefs as the Brotherhood.
Don't be so naive. How can you trust the word of a machine that thinks it's alive? A machine that's had its mind erased, its thoughts programmed, its very soul manufactured. Those ethics that it's striving to champion aren't even its own. They were artificially inserted in an attempt to have it blend into society.
It's true. I was built within the confines of a laboratory, and some of my memories aren't my own. But when I saw my brothers dying at my feet, I felt sorrow. When I defeated an enemy of the Brotherhood, I felt pride. And when I heard your speech about saving the Commonwealth, I felt hope. Don't you understand? I thought I was human, Arthur. From the moment I was taken in by the Brotherhood, I've done absolutely nothing to betray your trust, and I never will.
This is where the dialogue system once again fails. Maxon is acting completely irrationally here, and you once again have no meaningful way to call him out for any of the nonsense he's spewing here. Dance's responses are pretty good too, because he isn't just talking over or around another character, like what happens with much of the rest of the game, but he's actually presenting arguments with sound logic behind them. But the best we get in response is this.
It's too late for that now. The Institute has foolishly chosen to grant you life. You simply should not exist. I don't intend to debate this any longer. My orders stand.
What do you mean it's too late for that now? This is actual nonsense. You just found out he's a synth, and that overrides years of dedicated service. I hate the line that it's too late, because that usually refers to literal passage of time, or some action that cannot be taken back. Nothing of what has happened here could be characterized as being too late. It's just used as an excuse to dismiss the actual sound arguments Dance is making, for the sake of the drama. Sure, you could make the argument that Maxon is a radical who will never change, but that immediately gets undercut by the fact that Maxon can be convinced to spare Dance.
That's insane. He dedicated his life to protecting mankind.
Is that what it told you?
He's literally been a part of your group for years. It's evidenced by his actions, not simply his words. See, there's also a greater issue here under the surface, and I think this highlights quite well just how shallow this game is. Going back to the whole issue of the synths, the big conflict here, and with the Institute, is the question of whether synths are truly sapient, or are they just machines programmed to act a certain way towards stimuli? Are they real people, or are they soulless automatons that mimic human behavior? Now, as a writer, you can raise this question without answering it, leaving it intentionally vague, or letting the audience decide for themselves. However, where the shallowness comes in is with your ability to even engage with this question. Because your options are always so limited, whether it be due to writer incompetence, or the god-awful dialogue system, or even simple laziness that results in your 4 dialogue options meaning nothing, you can never truly delve into this issue with the game, and it instead comes across as the game barely paying lip service to the idea. This is made worse by the Star Warsification of robots, and I guess that's an issue I'll have to deal with now too, because it ties into this whole discussion. In past games, robots have mostly been robots, and that they are automatons designed with a purpose, be it security, military use, or even for common household chores, or even having functions in a museum. Though there's no good reason this particular interaction should affect your karma. Even the companion RL3 in Fallout 3 is explained to have a simulated personality unit, which, as the name implies, simulates having a personality, but it is still just a metal tin with a voice box and a gun. The one exception to all these examples is in the Zax computers mentioned in the previous video. They're super powerful AI that seems to have gained sapience over time, but these are computers that take up entire massive rooms. Then, in Fallout 4, we get a robot butler that can apparently have feelings and judge you and make decisions, such as leaving for Concord, or forcing you to play a stupid game to find your family that you know aren't in Sanctuary.
Have I mentioned I'm afraid of heights? Especially ones with ramshackle crumbly bits? Real fault of stick to it, Mum. I'm glad to be right here with you through it all. Sarg, matey. Perchance we find a chest of doubloons. Mum, you've no idea how excruciating it is to see the Commonwealth in such a state. It simply sets off all my senses as a robot butler.
Codsworth, as he exists, seems to imply a greater intelligence and free will to the robots than they should maybe have. Then we have Cleo, who is straight up a sapient robot who runs a store and has plans to kill everyone in Goodneighbor under certain circumstances, even showing that she would have mercy towards one particular character. She talks about liking and disliking customers, and so forth.
Everything here is guaranteed to injure, maim, or kill at your discretion. Except me. I only kill when I want to. Designation, Assaultron. Designed to provide a variety of security-related tasks to the modern man. Runtime conclusion. Why work for the man when you can work for yourself? New designation, KLEO, Cleo. Fully independent small business owner.
You're an Assaultron?
That's what my makers called me. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm a woman. And I run a store that sells very large guns.
Don't need anything today.
Disappointing. Don't worry. I only test the weapons on customers I don't like. Feel free to browse.
Hey, Cleo.
I hope you're buying. Even a girl with an arsenal full of weapons needs to make a living, after all.
This is why I call it the Star Warsification of the robots, because the robots in Star Wars are often treated as you'd expect a machine would be, but then they'd have personalities and feelings beyond the scope of what you might expect from programming. C-3PO is prissy and uptight. He comments on when he thinks someone is rude. But this largely makes sense because he's a robot meant for diplomacy and translation. But then we get R2-D2, who clearly has a personality, despite being a utility droid that can only talk from beeps and boops. This raises the question of what the droids even are, in terms of intelligence and sapience, because there doesn't seem to be a clear answer, and it's something they can't really answer, because if they are just robots that don't actually feel, then those character moments with them don't mean much anymore. And if they are sapient beings, then that has horrific implications for the whole universe. That's much the same issue here in Fallout 4 now. Is Codsworth a machine following lines of code, or is he a sapient being with true feelings and emotions, so mistreating him is morally wrong? You can program a character in a game to be upset if you're rude to them, but that's a program responding to input, so it doesn't matter, and killing that character in the game, similarly, is neither a good nor evil act. But if Codsworth is a real thinking life form, within the confines of a robot body, then killing him would be a bad thing to do. Further still, it's implied that programming is a limitation upon the robots, rather than allowing them to function as they do.
Ah, a fellow Mr. Handy. Hello there, old chap. Good to see another of General Atomic's finest, still eager to serve. And a good day to you too, sir. Can I interest you in a refreshing glass of Deezer's lemonade? Don't be daft. You know I can't use the stuff. No discrimination here. Everyone benefits from Deezer's lemonade. Get yours today while supplies last. A pity. It appears Deezer's programming is too severe to allow for normal conversation. Ah, well.
The implication is that robots are free by default, and it's their programming that limits them to servitude or whatever function they're given. This now changes the moral implications behind using, controlling, and killing robots, because they're no longer toasters programmed to follow commands, but intelligent thinking beings that are essentially being lobotomized, having their tongues cut out, and being bent to someone's will. All of this, by the way, is before we even return to the question of the synths. This is just still regular-ass robots. I can't even tell if this is intentional by the writers, or if they accidentally raised this question in their game about whether synths are sapient life, or machines following code. If Codsworth and Cleo act as proof that machines can be intelligent beings capable of free will, thus deserving the right to live, then that handily answers the question of whether or not synths are too, right? But then this goes even deeper when you consider that Curie exists. She is a Miss Nanny robot that was used in a Vault experiment to create cures for illnesses and diseases, and apparently she was either given or retained sapience at some point, as she is yet another example of a robot that has feelings, likes, dislikes, and desires. Further still, she can have her consciousness and memories transferred into a synth body to allow her to grow and learn even further. This is treated as an AI essentially becoming human. This is Pinocchio becoming a real boy. I find it questionable that this is something that can even be done in the first place, but the implications are insane given everything implied by the game so far. This essentially means that most, if not all robots can become human, given the right circumstances and resources, making them total equivalents to us as far as intelligent, free-thinking life goes. This also naturally raises the question of whether this is even true free will and intelligence or not, which might not ever truly be answered and is far beyond the capabilities of the writers of this game to properly explore. Any sufficiently advanced AI should realistically be able to perfectly imitate something that appears to be natural human behavior. Given properly advanced AI in robotics, it should be entirely possible to program a robot to, for example, be arachnophobic. It is given a definition of what a spider is and what they look like, given the ability to detect what fictional versions of them may look like, maybe even alien versions if such a thing exists, and react with fear or terror in any number of ways that such a fear might result in. And if you can program something like that into a robot, why not other imitations of feelings as well? As a result of all this information and these ideas and concepts, these should naturally be examples and options that you should be able to bring up and explore when considering the question of whether every synth is a person with free will or a machine following lines of code. Even if we never get a definitive answer one way or the other, there still should be the option to argue the case anytime it comes up, and maybe even convince people one way or the other. Argue the case to the Institute that synths are free-thinking beings and give proof that even standard robots can attain sapience. Hell, argue in the other direction that Dance is just a machine programmed to follow commands and orders. That he is a machine that's made to believe he's a person and follow Brotherhood orders and beliefs. And even if you can't convince some people one way or the other, like Sean or Maxon or Desdemona, at least the possibility to reach those discussions should be there. At least it would go in depth to exploring the issue, rather than simply paying lip service to the idea that maybe synths are people, maybe they're just robots, I don't know. But also, here's a robot that clearly has free will. Here's a robot that becomes human and literally is a person. This is why I say the game is shallow and doesn't know what the fuck it's even doing. I don't even know if the writers intended for things to be this way or not, because while it was very clearly a question they intended to raise, I don't know if they intended all this other information to exist to augment the discussion or not. Especially when the ability to even acknowledge this other information simply does not exist and isn't available to these conversations, and especially considering that any other time the game has something to say, it accidentally contradicts itself with something else. Synths are a brain scan. No wait, they're interrogations. No wait, I don't fucking know how they get their memories. Ghouls need water. Wait, no they don't. Wait, yes they do. One of the biggest problems with the majority of the writing for this game being terrible is that anytime something half-decent does come up, it's a question of whether there's truly any effort put into it, or if they just stumbled upon it by complete accident and didn't even realize it, thus devaluing these moments further. These are great moments with Scribe Halen, Nora and Dance's responses to Maxon, but they're undercut and ruined by everything else surrounding them in this quest. If anything, the fact that nothing truly comes from Maxon's decision to spare Dance more so just comes across as a lazy way out for the writers. This is a situation that you should have a real decision with impact. Kill Dance to stay with the Brotherhood, or stick with Dance and complete the game with a different faction. Having made a setup that would logically conclude this way, the writers come up with this third option, of both sticking with the Brotherhood and sparing Dance. To do so, they made it so Maxon would allow it. Sure, maybe that is a valid way to end this. But then they gave none of the key character development aspects that would be required for Maxon's decision to make sense, and not just be a cheap, easy, and lazy cop-out from actually having to make a decision, because Maxon growing from this moment would change the entire Brotherhood at this point. But no, we can't have any hard choices here. We can't challenge the player at all, and we can't have any interesting character growth. Just go shoot some enemies or something, I don't know. After pretending that didn't happen, you're sent to go shoot some enemies or something. You now have to wipe out the railroad, and let me just say how fucking cathartic this is, after having to deal with this insanely annoying group of obnoxious cunts. Yes, I'm absolutely lingering on this moment, because fuck the railroad. This should also go without saying, but all the problems previously mentioned when the Institute wanted to wipe them out applies here as well. The Brotherhood give you 5 specific targets to take out that would mean the end of the railroad, and they all hang out in the same base. There's just no excuse for this. Following that is Spoils of War. This is the Brotherhood side of mass fusion. Enter a building, grab the item, and deal with enemy forces. It progresses in exactly the same way as the Institute side. Instead, you're fighting for the Brotherhood and against the Institute. It does raise the question, however, of how the Institute got their new reactor online, because on their side of this quest, the item taken was used for the nuclear reactor. But now they don't have it because it's in Liberty Prime, so how do they get around this? Next is Ad Victoriam. Basically, you turn on Liberty Prime and follow him on his path of destruction until you reach the Institute, and blow a hole in their ceiling to enter from. I don't understand why Liberty Prime was required for this. It seems like some explosives would have been enough, but I guess Bethesda wouldn't be able to nostalgia bait Liberty Prime otherwise. There's that final quest we're going to save for later once again, but we're really close to it now. I just need to talk about the Brotherhood side quests, and they don't have many. First up is a loose end. The Brotherhood decides that Virgil needs to die because he's a super mutant. You could kill him, you could spare him, or you could cure him and inform them of that fact. I already discussed the substance of this earlier, there's not much more to say on the matter. It is absolutely worth noting that Captain Kells acknowledges that Virgil is trapped in the glowing sea as a human, but the game does nothing to explain how he's going to survive. Even the basics of food and water don't seem to be covered, as far as I've seen. This is yet another instance where Bethesda should have done more, but simply didn't. Kells does mention that Virgil could be an asset to the Brotherhood, but doesn't elaborate on that and simply says they'll keep monitoring him. I fully expect Virgil to be a Brotherhood NPC by the next game. Next is Duty or Dishonor. Supplies are going missing, and strangely enough, it isn't weapons or armor, but food. After doing some questioning, you follow a guy to an underground area of the airport. Turns out, he felt bad about watching the Brotherhood kill all the ghouls at the airport, and now he's, feeding the remaining ones in the underground. Fucking what? I think this quest is trying to set up the ghouls can be domesticated or something. That they're just violent because they're hungry, or something. Which is fucking stupid. But otherwise, there isn't much to this quest at all. Finally is the Lost Patrol, which is a series of finding beacons and holotapes that lead you to an old bunker with a lone Brotherhood member. He's kind of fucked up, but you can convince him to rejoin the Brotherhood. Naturally, the Brotherhood has Radiant quests as well. You all know what I'm gonna say. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please subscribe and check out the full analysis.